What is up, people of the interwebs? It's me, John Crump, and today we are going to be talking about Timothy Durkin and what is going on because this is a crazy story. I've been aware of it for probably a year now, but I thought it was going to get dropped when Trump got into office just because, but it's not. So let's get into it and we'll talk about it. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for watching and thank you for tuning in. Your support really makes a difference, and there's tons of ways you can support the channel down below in the description. Today, we're going to be talking about something out of Kansas and federal charges against Timothy Durkin. Timothy Durkin owns a company that you might have heard of, Durkin Tactical. Durkin Tactical sells gun parts and stuff like that, not firearms, just gun parts and stuff like that. But that is not where he and the ATF got into a little disagreement. Jordan Vinro, Gideon Optics, grab one. But yeah, and there's a code for Gideon Optics in the description. But what happened was Timothy Durkin knows people at Anderson Manufacturing. During the COVID era, gun shops were having a real hard time getting inventory. Prices were through the roof during COVID because everybody wanted firearms, but there was no firearms to be had. So what Timothy did was he brokered deals with Anderson Manufacturing and these gun stores. He acted as a middleman. He would go to the store and negotiate with them what they were willing to pay for Anderson Manufacturing firearms. And then he would go to Anderson Manufacturing, who would agree to the deal and sell the guns to the gun stores directly. Timothy Durkin did not take possession of the firearms, and at no times was any firearms shipped to him. They were shipped directly from Anderson Manufacturing to the gun stores. So one FFL to another FFL, and that FFL sold it to people who went through the federal background check system known as NICS. Nothing wrong with that, right? Well, in 2022, the ATF sent Durkin a cease and desist, stating that he was no longer allowed to broker deals because in order to broker a deal, you needed to have an FFL. There was nothing in the law back then, and there still is nothing in the law back then that says that you need a FFL to broker a deal. So he thought he was doing nothing wrong because he was not taking possession of any of the firearms, and no firearms were being shipped to him, and they were going directly from Anderson to the gun stores in Kansas. So in 2022, he received a cease and desist letter. So he stopped. He stopped actually before he got the cease and desist letter because inventories kind of rebounded after the whole COVID thing died down and his services were no longer needed. Durkin was doing it mostly to keep these gun stores afloat because under the Biden administration, they were under a lot of pressure. Biden shut down a lot of gun stores. And with no inventory available, these gun stores are going out of business. You got to remember that gun stores don't make a lot of money on individual firearms. They make money on volume sales. The margins on firearms is actually very low. And with no guns in the store, there was no margins. So these gun stores kept on going out of business. So what he did kept a lot of gun stores in business. So he got this ATF cease and desist letter. He was like, I'm not doing it anymore anyway. So whatever. And went on about his days. In 2024, the DOJ filed a criminal case against them, a felony for being in the business of dealing guns without a license, which is a felony. But now Durkin is facing a lengthy jail term, but he never ever sold a gun. And if you read through the GCA of 1968, the Gun Control Act of 1968, there's nowhere in the Gun Control Act of 1968 that says that brokers have to have an FFL to broker deals between gun stores and gun manufacturers. It's really ridiculous. So you might be thinking this is just the Biden administration. And when Trump came in, of course, the DOJ decided to drop the charges because Trump's executive order said stop prosecuting people for exercising their Second Amendment rights. That is not the case. The DOJ is pushing with the prosecution of Timothy Durkin for brokering deals between FFLs and also the manufacturers. Very, very interesting. And Ed Bender brings up a good point. I was going to get to that in a second, but shout out to you, Ed, for bringing that up. We'll get to that in a second. It's very interesting that the DOJ decided to go ahead and prosecute this guy for brokering deals. There is laws on the books that you have to get a license to broker exporting of firearms, but there's nothing to say that domestic selling of firearms, you need a license to broker a deal. And if there, if that was the case, that's the way the law should read. The exporting of firearms, the law does read that way. So if we are to believe that Congress wants anyone who brokers deals to have an FFL, you have to ask yourself, why isn't that in the law if it is in the law for exporting of firearms? So I don't think that that ever was the intent of the law. This also brings up other questions, and this is something that I find very, very interesting because think about it. Arms list, gun broker, all these other places that don't have FFLs that basically act as a middleman websites, could they be charged with violating the GCA for not having an FFL? How about affiliates like gun affiliates, like people that are on AvantLink or whatnot that deal with like CMG and all these other companies? Are those people or the PSA affiliates, which I happen to be a PSA affiliate. So if you see anything on the PSA website, let me know. I'll get you a link. But let's say, are those affiliates required to have an FFL because they are acting as a middleman? They're not taking money directly from the customers, they're taking money from the manufacturer or the gun stores in this case that are selling the guns online, but they are receiving money for the selling and the transfer of firearms, and they're not taking possession of the firearms, just like Timothy Durkin didn't take possession of the firearms. So that's an interesting question, and I think that would be a very interesting thing to think about because if they are going to prosecute Timothy Durkin for brokering middleman deals, what is to stop them from prosecuting affiliates of gun stores and gun dealers? It's definitely something that we need to think about. And this is why the case is more important than just Durkin, because this can apply to a bunch of people out there. And that is not a good thing. Once again, let me just state that the guns never were in possession of Timothy Durkin. He was just a middleman. They went directly from Anderson Manufacturing, who believed that they weren't doing anything wrong. And I believe that they weren't doing anything wrong, to the gun stores, who were not doing anything wrong in their opinion, and in my opinion as well. The only person that got charged was Timothy Durkin. So we're gonna have to see what happens here. It is a tragedy of justice that the ATF and the DOJ is still pushing these charges against Durkin for some convoluted reason. It's very, very unusual. Um, I thought when Trump came in that this was going to be dropped because these charges were filed under Biden, and in fact, the AUSA for Kansas was a left-leaning person who got fired and replaced by a supposedly pro Second Amendment AUSA. But since this prosecution is going forward, it definitely does not appear to look like the Trump administration and the DOJ Bondi and everyone who works for her at the ATF, DOJ, and US Attorney's Office is taking Trump's executive order on Second Amendment rights seriously. So that is something that we really, really need to look into. Trump played the gun community for votes. I've been knew it. Trump is not too a friendly. Let's just tell the truth. You're not gonna hear an argument from me. You're not gonna hear an argument from me. He has done some good stuff on guns during his second term, and I would give him credit for that. During his first term, he was absolutely horrible on the Second Amendment. He should be stronger on the Second Amendment. I would love to see him be stronger on the Second Amendment. And moreover, not just him, but the people who work for him, I think, is the problem. Pam Bondi is the problem, and the people that work for Pam Bondi are the problem. There are some good people. There are some good people in the ATF, and believe it or not, but there is so many anti-gun people that they don't even realize how anti-gun they are, which is definitely a huge problem that we need to address. All right, guys. Just wanted to make a quick video talking about Timothy Durkin. I did speak to his lawyer, and yeah, I've known about this for a while. But I thought I was confident that it was going to be dropped by the DOJ because I just don't see a crime there. And it was a prosecution by the Biden administration because they hated guns. And I don't see a crime there. And I thought, well, this will get worked out. Apparently not. Apparently, they have yet disappointed me again. I shouldn't be surprised. And to tell you the truth, I'm not really surprised. But we need to shine light on this. So if you can do me a favor, share this video out. We need to put pressure on the DOJ because pressure does work no matter what they. Why are people talking about bologna and bacon? I don't know. But we need to put pressure on the DOJ to drop the charges against Timothy Durkin. I think one of the reasons why they are targeting him because he has a pretty large website that sells tons of gun parts to the builder community, and I'm pretty sure that's probably why they are targeting him. But yeah, all right, uh, that is it. But without further ado, I think we're gonna get out of here. This just goes to show you how bad the government can be. All right, guys, that's it. Talk to you later. Bye bye.